Ethan was a quiet man who lived at the edge of the city. He had no wife, no children, and very few friends, but every night, no matter how tired he felt, he carried a small bag of food down the street. The food was not for him. It was for the stray dogs that lived in the dark alleys. The dogs always waited for him, their tails wagging, their eyes shining in the shadows. Ethan liked their company because they never judged him, never asked questions, and never left him alone. It became his habit, his routine, his small way of feeling useful in a world that mostly ignored him. But one cold night, things changed that evening. The streets were silent, too silent. The wind blew hard, carrying scraps of paper along the ground. Ethan walked with his bag of food, his footsteps echoing between the empty buildings. When he reached the usual spot, he bent down and placed the food on the ground. Normally the dogs would come running, barking, pushing each other, but this time not a single dog appeared. Ethan frowned, listening. The silence felt heavy, almost dangerous. Then, from the corner of the alley, he heard something else, not barking, not growling, but soft, broken cries. The sound was weak, like someone trying to cry without strength. He slowly turned his head, his heart beating faster. In the shadows, he saw two small shapes. At first, he thought they were children. But when his eyes adjusted to the dim light, he froze. They were not human children. They were two thin girls, their skin pale with a faint silver glow. Their eyes were large, shining faintly in the dark, like stars trapped in tears. Their clothes were torn, dirty, and strange, made of fabric he had never seen before. Ethan's mouth went dry. He wanted to run. His instincts screamed at him, but their eyes stopped him. The two girls looked at him with fear, hunger, and something else, desperation. They did not move closer. They only clung to each other. Shivering, Ethan whispered, "Are you all right?" Of course, they did not answer. Instead, one of them pointed weakly at the bag of food in his hand. For a long moment, Ethan stood frozen. Was this real? Was he dreaming? Aliens right here in his city, hiding like lost animals. He felt the world tilt under his feet. But then one of the girls coughed, a sharp, painful sound. Her tiny shoulders shook as if her body could barely hold itself together. Ethan's heart softened. He bent down slowly and placed the bag of food in front of them. The girls stared at him, unsure if it was a trick. Then, with trembling hands, they reached for the food. They ate like creatures who had not touched food in days, maybe weeks. Tears rolled down their glowing cheeks as they chewed. Ethan watched silently, his fear changing into something else. Pity, and a strange, protective feeling when they finished. The smaller girl whispered a sound. It was not English, not any language Ethan knew, but he felt the meaning. It was thank you. He swallowed hard, not knowing what to do next. Suddenly, the quiet night broke. From the far street, a low humming noise echoed. It sounded like a machine. Heavy and strange, the girls stiffened, their glowing eyes wide with terror. They grabbed Ethan's coat, pulling him with surprising strength. They wanted to hide, to escape. Ethan looked toward the street and saw lights moving, searching, sweeping back and forth. Someone was out there, and they were hunting. In that instant, Ethan understood. These girls were not only lost, they were being chased, and whoever hunted them was close. His body shook, fear rising inside him. But when he looked down at the two small figures clinging to him, he made a choice. "Come," he whispered. He motioned with his hand, leading them carefully down a side path. Away from the lights, the girls followed, trusting him completely. Every sound behind them made Ethan's heart jump. The humming grew louder, then faded, then came back again. It was like wolves circling, waiting for the moment to strike. Finally, he reached his house, a small old building at the edge of the neighborhood. He unlocked the door with shaking hands and let them inside. The girls entered silently, moving like shadows. When the door closed, the outside noise faded. For the first time, Ethan breathed again. But as he looked at the two strange children sitting weakly on his floor, he knew his life had just changed forever. He had fed stray dogs for years without expecting anything in return. But tonight he had fed something else, two alien girls, starving, frightened, and hunted, and now they were his responsibility. The night stretched on, silent and heavy. Ethan sat in his chair, staring at them. The girls stared back. Clutching each other, none of them spoke, but all three knew one truth. Nothing would ever be the same again. Ethan barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the sound of the strange machine outside, humming and searching. Every time he opened them, he saw the two alien girls sitting quietly in the corner of his room. their silver glow faint like dying candlelight. He told himself he was dreaming, but no dream had ever felt this heavy, this real. Morning came slow, gray light creeping through broken blinds. The city outside woke up with its usual noise, cars honking, people shouting, doors slamming, but inside Ethan's house, silence ruled. The girls had not spoken a word. They only watched him with those large, glowing eyes. They looked fragile, like glass about to break. Yet their gaze held something old, something deep. Ethan stood up, rubbing his tired face. "What do I do with you?" he whispered. Of course they did not answer. But when he moved toward the kitchen, both of them stood quickly, following him like shadows. They were hungry again, he could see it. He made toast and scrambled eggs, placing plates in front of them. The girls sniffed the food carefully before eating. Every bite seemed a miracle to them, as if they were not sure real food still existed. While they ate, Ethan studied them. Their hair was pale, almost silver, tangled and dirty. Their skin had thin glowing lines like scars that pulsed faintly under the surface. Their clothes were ripped in strange patterns, made of material that looked too smooth, too light to be from Earth. He realized again what his heart already knew. They were not human. After breakfast, Ethan tried to speak slowly, using simple words, "My name." "Ethan," he said, pointing at himself. The older girl blinked, then touched her chest. "Lyra," she said softly. The younger one copied, her voice weaker. "Sierra," Ethan nodded, writing their names down on a piece of paper, showing it to them. They smiled for the first time, a small smile. But it lit the room like sunlight. Still, the moment was fragile because soon, Ethan's neighbor knocked on the door. Knock, knock, knock. Ethan froze, his stomach twisting. The girls jumped, fear flashing across their glowing faces. They grabbed each other's hands and hid behind Ethan's chair. The knock came again, harder this time. "Ethan? You home?" a voice called. It was Mr. Collins, the old man who lived next door. He was always curious, always watching. Ethan's throat felt dry. If Collins came in, he would see them. And if he saw them, he would tell someone. Ethan walked to the door, forcing his voice to stay calm. "Yeah, I'm here," he said, opening it a crack. Collins peered in, his sharp eyes scanning the room. "You all right, Ethan? I saw strange lights last night near your house," he said. Ethan's heart pounded, but he forced a smile. "Just kids with fireworks, nothing important," he lied. Collins narrowed his eyes, clearly not convinced. But after a long pause, he shrugged. "Well, be careful. World's strange these days," he muttered, and walked away. Ethan shut the door quickly, leaning against it with a long breath. When he turned back, the girls were trembling, their eyes wide with terror. They whispered something in their language, the sound sharp like broken glass he didn't understand. But he felt it. They were afraid of being found, afraid of being taken. Later that evening, Ethan heard a noise outside again, a low humming like before. Only closer this time. The girls froze, their bodies stiff. Sierra grabbed Lyra's hand and pointed at the window with panic in her eyes. Ethan pulled the blinds a little and saw a dark van parked across the street. Two men stepped out carrying strange devices that beeped softly. They scanned the ground, the walls, even the air itself. His blood ran cold. "Are they looking for you?" Ethan whispered. The girls nodded slowly. Their faces pale, Ethan felt sweat on his forehead. He had stumbled into something far bigger than he understood. He thought of calling the police, but his gut told him not to. Whoever these men were, they were not normal. If he called, maybe they would come faster. Maybe they were already working together. The beeping grew louder as the men walked closer. Ethan could hear them speaking in low voices. "2 life signatures, close," one of them said. The girls looked at him, silently begging. Ethan's heart raced. He couldn't let them be taken. Not after what he had seen in their eyes. Not after the way they clung to each other like the world was ending. "Upstairs, quick," he whispered. He led them to the small attic above his room. Pushing boxes aside, they crawled in, their glowing eyes watching him until the hatch closed. Downstairs, a sudden loud knock shook the door. "Bang, bang, bang, open up, we need to check the house," a deep voice ordered. Ethan stood frozen, his mind screaming. The night before, he had only fed 2 starving girls. But now, his simple life was gone. Danger had stepped right onto his doorstep. And if he made the wrong move now, he could lose everything. Ethan stood frozen as the heavy knocks echoed through the door. The voices outside were deep and sharp. not like friendly neighbors or police officers. They spoke with authority, like hunters who already knew their prey was inside. The two alien girls were hidden above in the attic, their glowing eyes watching from the cracks. Every bang on the door made them flinch, their small hands clinging tightly to each other. "Open the door now," the voice commanded. Ethan's throat felt dry, his heartbeat loud in his ears. He thought of lying, of pretending no one was home. But another bang rattled the frame, stronger this time. If he stayed silent, they might break it down. Finally, Ethan forced himself to speak. "I'm here, give me a moment," he said. His voice shaking, he opened the door just a little, enough to see the two men standing outside. They wore black coats and carried devices that glowed with strange lights. One of them held a scanner that beeped every few seconds. The sound made Ethan's skin crawl. "We are conducting a search," the taller man said, his eyes cold and hard. "We detected unusual signals in this area." "Step aside," Ethan's stomach twisted. Signals, he thought, they mean Lyra and Sierra. If they searched the house, it would be over. He forced a weak smile, trying to sound calm. "There's nothing here. Just me, I live alone," he said. The men exchanged a glance. Then one of them stepped forward. The scanner beeped louder. Ethan's heart nearly stopped. Thinking quickly, he coughed and said, "Wait, maybe it's the old wiring. My house is falling apart. Always messing with signals." The man looked annoyed, but not convinced. The scanner beeped again. Even sharper this time, the shorter man leaned close and whispered. Two life signs inside, faint but clear. Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. He had to act, he had to distract them before his mind could doubt. He shouted, "Hey, what's that?" and pointed behind them. Both men turned instinctively. In that second, Ethan grabbed the bag of leftover firecrackers he had kept from a festival long ago. He lit one quickly with trembling hands and tossed it into the street. Boom! Crack! Pop! The sudden explosions filled the air, smoke rising fast. The men cursed, spinning around in confusion. Ethan slammed the door shut and locked it. "Run!" He whispered toward the attic. The hatch creaked open and the girls dropped down, their faces pale with terror. Ethan grabbed their hands. Leading them toward the back door, the men outside shouted. Kicking the front door with heavy boots, the walls shook as the lock began to break. Ethan pushed the girls through the narrow alley behind his house. The cold air bit their skin, but there was no time to think. They ran, their footsteps echoing through empty streets. The city lights blurred around them, neon glowing against the night sky. Ethan's chest burned with every breath. But he didn't stop. The girls followed closely, their small bodies moving faster than he thought possible. Behind them, the hunters shouted, their boots striking the ground like thunder. The scanner beeped again and again, guiding them. Ethan turned sharply into an abandoned lot. The ground was covered with broken glass and rusted metal. He pulled the girls behind an old dumpster. For a moment, they crouched there. Gasping quietly, Lyra touched Ethan's arm, her glowing lines pulsing faintly. "Safe?" she whispered in broken English. Ethan shook his head. "No, not safe, not yet," he answered. The humming of a drone filled the air. Ethan looked up and saw a black machine floating above the rooftops, its red eye scanning the streets. The hunters had more than just scanners. They had drones too. The girls squeezed closer to Ethan, their eyes wide with fear. He realized then that they were not warriors. Not soldiers, they were children, frightened and desperate, and yet they carried something important, something worth chasing. The drone's red eye passed over their hiding place. Ethan held his breath, praying it would not see them. For a moment it hovered, scanning the air, then it moved on, drifting toward the main street. Ethan exhaled slowly, his hands shaking. But the danger wasn't gone. The hunters were still close, their footsteps echoing like hammers. Ethan knew they couldn't stay here. He had to move them somewhere safer, somewhere the scanners couldn't reach. He thought of the old train tunnels beneath the city. They had been closed for years. Abandoned after a collapse, no one went there anymore. If they could reach the tunnels, maybe they could hide. "Maybe they could survive the night. Follow me," Ethan whispered. The girls nodded, trusting him completely. They slipped out from behind the dumpster and moved quickly. The streets grew darker as they headed toward the forgotten part of the city. Broken lamps flickered weakly. Graffiti covered the walls. The air smelled of rust and dust. Finally, they reached the entrance to the tunnels. A metal gate stood half-broken, chains hanging loose. Ethan pushed it aside with effort, the sound of creaking echoing loudly. Inside, darkness swallowed them. Only the faint silver glow from the girl's skin lit the way. They moved deeper, their footsteps crunching on gravel. The tunnels were silent except for the dripping of water. For a moment, Ethan felt they were safe, hidden from the hunters, but then Lyra placed her hand on his arm and whispered in a trembling voice, "They still come." Ethan froze, listening. From behind them, faint but growing louder, came the sound of boots. The hunters had followed them into the dark. The chase was not over, it had only just begun. The tunnels were colder than the night above. Ethan led the way, his hands brushing against damp stone walls. Behind him, Lyra and Sierra followed closely, their faint silver glow casting ghostly light in the darkness. Every sound echoed, every drip of water felt like a warning. But the sound that haunted Ethan most was the steady rhythm of boots behind them. The hunters had entered the tunnels, and they were closing in. "Faster," Ethan whispered. His breath heavy, the girls obeyed. But their small feet stumbled on the uneven ground. Sierra nearly fell, but Ethan caught her arm and pulled her forward. The tunnel split into two paths. Each swallowing the weak light, he hesitated, unsure which way to go. Behind them, the scanner beeped faintly, echoing in the distance. They could not stay frozen, they had to move. Ethan chose the left tunnel, praying it would lead somewhere safe. The ground sloped downward, the air grew thicker with dust. The deeper they went, the more he felt trapped. But at least the hunters' voices faded, replaced by silence for a moment. Ethan allowed himself to hope they had lost them. That hope broke when the sound of a drone filled the tunnel. Its red light cut through the darkness like a blade. Ethan cursed under his breath, pushing the girls behind a rusted pipe. The drone hovered, scanning, its eye sweeping side to side. Lyra's hands trembled as she pressed against the wall. Her glow flickering, the machine tilted, almost sensing them. Ethan picked up a loose rock and hurled it down the opposite tunnel. The sound cracked through the silence. The drone spun and zipped toward the noise. Leaving them in shadow again, Ethan exhaled sharply. His body shaking, they moved deeper, the tunnel eventually leading them to an old stairway. At the top, a broken gate opened into the city streets. Ethan pushed it open and led the girls out. They emerged into a forgotten district of the city. The buildings here were half ruined, neon signs flickering weakly. Stray cats darted through piles of garbage. The smell of oil and smoke filled the air. For the first time, the girls looked around with wide eyes. It was as if they had never seen a human city before. Lyra touched a neon sign that buzzed with blue light. Staring at it in wonder, Sierra crouched to watch the cats, her glowing fingers reaching out carefully. Ethan felt a pang in his chest. They were hunted, frightened, but they were still children, curious about the world. "Stay close," he whispered. They nodded, their eyes still scanning the strange streets as they moved through the district. Ethan noticed how empty it felt. Shadows stretched long, and the only sound was the distant hum of traffic far away. But he knew it would not stay empty for long. The hunters had drones, scanners, and time on their side. They would not stop until they found the girls. Suddenly, Sierra stumbled, clutching her arm. Her glow dimmed, her face pale with pain. Ethan knelt quickly, panic rising. "What's wrong?" he asked, though he knew she could not answer. Lyra placed her hand gently on her sister's arm. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, faint silver light spread from Lyra's palm into Sierra's skin. The glow pulsed, brighter and brighter. Ethan watched in disbelief as the wounds on Sierra's arm faded, the bruises vanishing before his eyes. When it was over, Sierra's glow returned. Her breathing steadied. Lyra swayed, exhausted, but managed a weak smile. Ethan stared, his mind spinning. "They can heal," he whispered. Not only were they alien children, they carried powers humans could not imagine. If the hunters wanted them, maybe it was not just for study. Maybe it was for control before he could think further. Headlights flashed at the end of the street. A black van rolled slowly toward them, its windows tinted. Ethan's blood ran cold. "They found us," he hissed, pulling the girls into a narrow alley. The van stopped, doors sliding open. Men stepped out, armed, their scanners glowing red in the dark. Ethan's heart pounded. They had nowhere left to run. The alley was a dead end. The girls pressed against the wall, eyes wide with terror. Ethan searched desperately for an idea, any escape. The men moved closer, their voices echoing, targets confirmed. "Signal's strong," one said. The scanner beeped rapidly, guiding them. Ethan clenched his fists, ready to fight even if it meant losing. But then something unexpected happened. The ground beneath them shook, faint at first, then stronger. Dust fell from the walls, bricks cracked. The men stopped, confused. Ethan looked down and saw the faint silver glow spreading from the girls' feet into the ground. Their fear had triggered something. Some hidden power. The walls of the alley vibrated. Lights flickered and burst. With a sudden crack, the ground split open. Revealing a gap wide enough to crawl through, Ethan did not hesitate. "Go!" he shouted, pushing the girls through the opening. They slipped inside. Vanishing into the darkness below, Ethan followed. The sound of the hunters shouting above them. Bullets cracked against the stone as the men fired blindly into the gap. But by the time they forced it wider, Ethan and the girls were gone. They tumbled into another forgotten tunnel deeper than before. The air was thick, but they were alive. The girls clung to Ethan, their glowing eyes filled with both fear and hope. He held them close, whispering, "We keep moving no matter what. We keep moving." Above them, the hunters searched. But in the dark belly of the city, Ethan and the alien girls disappeared once more. The tunnel swallowed them whole. Ethan's chest burned as he ran, his breath sharp in the heavy air. Lyra and Sierra clung to his arms, their faint glow guiding the way behind them. The echoes of shouting and boots grew closer. The hunters had not lost them, not yet. Ethan led them through the twisting paths. The walls dripped with water. Rats darted across broken pipes. He tried to stay calm, but every turn felt like a trap. Finally, they reached a wider chamber, old train tracks stretching into darkness. Ethan slowed, scanning the shadows. For a moment it seemed they were alone. But then the humming began again, drones, more than one this time, their red eyes glowing like blood in the dark. The sound multiplied, bouncing off the tunnel walls. Ethan cursed under his breath, pulling the girls toward an old maintenance door. It was rusted, half broken. But it opened with a loud groan. They slipped inside, hiding behind piles of metal and debris. The girls pressed close to him, trembling. Sierra buried her face in his chest. Lyra whispered something in her language, her glow flickering with fear. Ethan tightened his arms around them. "It's all right. I won't let them take you," he whispered. But even as he spoke, the beeping of scanners grew louder. The door burst open with a violent crash. Blinding light filled the room. Shadows of men poured in, their weapons raised. Targets confirmed. "Capture them alive," one shouted. Ethan stood, fist clenched. Ready to fight. He knew he was only a man, but he couldn't just give them up. The first soldier charged. Ethan swung wildly, landing a punch. The man staggered back, but another slammed the butt of his rifle into Ethan's ribs. Pain exploded through his body. He gasped and fell. Lyra cried out, rushing toward him, but hands grabbed her. Pulling her back, Sierra screamed, her glow flaring bright. For a second, the air shimmered with strange energy. The soldiers recoiled, shields crackling, but then they forced her down. Chains snapping around her wrists, Ethan tried to rise, but a boot pressed on his chest, pinning him to the ground. He choked, struggling for air above him. The soldiers dragged the girls away. Their cries echoed through the chamber, filled with terror. "Ethan!" Lyra screamed, the words sharp and broken in her weak English. He reached out helplessly as they were pulled into the light. A sharp blow struck the side of his head, and darkness swallowed him. When Ethan woke, his world had changed. The air was sterile, the walls white and smooth. He lay on a metal bed, restraints around his wrists. A soft hum filled the room, machines blinking with cold lights. For a moment he didn't remember. Then he heard it, faint, muffled cries from the next room. The girls. Ethan sat up, pain stabbing his ribs. Through a glass wall he saw them. Lyra and Sierra trapped inside glowing tubes filled with mist. Their small hands pressed against the glass, their eyes wide with terror. Wires ran from the tubes into machines. Measuring their every breath, Ethan's stomach turned. Rage burning in his chest, the door opened, and a man in a white coat stepped inside. He was tall, his eyes sharp. "You should not have interfered," he said coldly. "These creatures are not your concern. They are government property now." Ethan's fist clenched. "They're not property, they're children," he spat. The man tilted his head, almost amused. "They are not children. They are experiments. Survivors of a crash we have been studying for years. Do you understand the value of what they carry? Their biology alone could change the future of mankind." Ethan's heart pounded. "What do you want with them?" he asked, his voice rough. The man smirked. "What all nations want, power." With that, he left, the door sliding shut behind him. Ethan sat in silence, staring through the glass at the girls. They looked back at him, tears streaking their glowing faces. They tapped the glass weakly, their mouths moving without sound. Ethan pressed his palm against the glass, wishing he could break it. He whispered, "I'll get you out, I promise." Suddenly, a strange sensation pricked Ethan's mind. A faint voice, soft and trembling, echoed in his thoughts. "Ethan." He froze, eyes wide. The voice wasn't in the room, it was inside his head. He looked at the girls, Lyra's glowing eyes locked on his. Again, the voice whispered, "They hurt us, but we trust you. Save us." Ethan shivered, his heart racing. They weren't only aliens, they could reach into his thoughts. They were speaking to him without words, and they were begging him for help. The restraints around his wrists felt heavier than chains, but his resolve burned stronger than ever. He didn't know how, but he would escape. He would break those tubes, and he would take Lyra and Sierra far away from this place. Because now he understood. They were more than lost children. They were the key to something greater, and the world would not stop hunting them. The lights above flickered, a warning siren began to hum. Footsteps echoed in the hall outside. The hunters had captured them. But Ethan swore to himself. This fight was not over. The secret. They carried Ethan, sat on the cold bed, his wrists chained, his body aching through the glass wall. He could still see the two alien girls. Lyra and Sierra floated weakly in the glowing tubes, their small hands pressed against the glass. Their silver light flickered like candles about to die. Ethan's heart ached, anger rising like fire in his chest. The door hissed open and two guards entered. One unchained Ethan and dragged him to his feet. "Come," the guard ordered coldly. Ethan stumbled forward, pulled into a long white corridor. At the end waited the man in the white coat, the one with the sharp eyes. "This way," he said, his voice calm but cruel. They led Ethan into a large chamber. Machines hummed. Screens glowed with strange symbols. In the center, two massive tubes pulsed with energy. Inside, Lyra and Sierra were trapped again. Wires and sensors stuck to their fragile bodies. Their eyes locked on Ethan the moment he entered. He felt their silent cry in his chest. The man in the coat smiled faintly. "Do you want to know why they matter?" he asked. Ethan said nothing, his jaw tight. The man stepped closer to the tubes, placing a hand on the glass. "These children are not ordinary survivors," he said. "They carry something inside them, something your human mind cannot fully grasp." He pressed a button, and the machines whirred louder. The tubes glowed brighter, the girls crying out silently as energy rippled through them. On the screen, strange shapes appeared, a spiral, a star map, a pulsing core of light. Ethan's eyes widened. "What is that?" he demanded. The man turned, his expression filled with cold pride. "It is a living map, a power source, a guide left by their people. In their blood, in their very bodies, lies a star core. With it, we can reach worlds beyond this one. We can create weapons no enemy could match. They are not just children, they are keys." Ethan shook his head, rage boiling inside him. "They're alive. Not tools," he snapped. The man's smile faded, his voice hard. "Do not mistake mercy for weakness. If they refuse to give us what we want, we will take it anyway." Lyra's eyes glowed brighter. Her gaze locked on Ethan, and then once again, he heard it. A voice inside his head, trembling but clear. "Ethan, please and help us," he gasped softly, looking at the girls. Their lips had not moved, yet the words filled his mind. The man didn't notice, too focused on his machines. "Tonight," the man continued, "we begin extraction. Their bodies will not survive, but their secret will live, and you, Mr. Ethan, will watch. So you understand the price of protecting them." Ethan's blood turned to ice. He clenched his fists, his breath quickening. The girls shook inside the tubes, their small faces twisted with fear. Through the telepathic bond, Ethan felt it too. Their pain, their terror, their desperate hope. It filled him like fire, burning away his fear. The guards pulled him back toward the door, but as they dragged him, Lyra's voice echoed stronger in his mind. "Ethan, you must take us." "To the ship?" He thought wildly. He looked at her glowing eyes, and the answer came. Images filled his head. Visions not his own. A broken craft buried in the desert, half hidden beneath the sand. That was where they had come from. That was where their people had fallen, and that was where they could be safe. Ethan stumbled as the guards shoved him into another cell. But now he had a plan. He had to escape. He had to reach that ship. Because if the hunters and scientists reached it first, Earth would change forever. He sat in the cell, breathing hard. The walls were cold, the floor rough, but his mind burned with new determination. He whispered to himself, "I'll get you out, Lyra Sierra." I swear it. Hours passed, then alarms suddenly blared through the facility. Red lights flashed, sirens wailed, guards shouted down the hall. Ethan jumped to his feet, pressing against the bars. "What's happening?" he muttered. Then he felt it, an energy in the air, sharp and strange. The ground trembled slightly, lights flickered. The girls were fighting back from the chamber beyond. Silver light pulsed against the walls. The tubes shook, cracks spreading in the glass. Lyra and Sierra's voices echoed in Ethan's head louder than before. "We cannot hold much longer. Help us." The cell door rattled as guards rushed past. Ethan saw his chance. One guard fumbled with his weapon. Distracted by the alarms with sudden strength, Ethan lunged, slamming into him. The rifle clattered to the ground. Ethan grabbed it. Striking the guard down, breathing hard, he stumbled into the hall. The facility shook as he ran toward the chamber. Smoke drifted through the air. Sparks fell from broken lights. When he reached the door, he froze. The tubes had shattered, glass littering the floor. The girls lay weakly on the ground, glowing faintly, wires torn from their bodies. Guards circled them, shouting, weapons raised. Ethan roared, charging forward. Firing wildly, the sound of gunfire echoed. The guards scattering, he dropped the rifle and rushed to the girls. Pulling them into his arms, they trembled, their glow fading. Lyra whispered in his mind, her voice weak but clear. "Desert. Ship. Take us home." Ethan tightened his hold, his face set with fierce resolve. He didn't know how far the desert was. He didn't know how many enemies stood in his way, but he knew one thing. He would get them to that ship, no matter the cost. The desert stretched endlessly. Waves of sand glowed under the pale moon. The night was cold, silent. Heavy with tension, Ethan stumbled forward, carrying Sierra in his arms while Lyra walked beside him. Her glow faint but steady. They were weak, but their eyes still shone with hope. Behind them, the city lights flickered faintly. Far away now, but danger was not gone. It was chasing them still. Ethan's boots sank into the sand with every step. His body screamed with exhaustion, but he kept moving. The girls guided him with whispers in his mind, showing him the path. And at last, rising from the dunes like the bones of a giant beast, he saw it, the ship, half buried, broken, but still glowing faintly with alien light. Its hull was cracked, pieces scattered like scars across the sand. But even in ruin, it looked powerful, ancient, alive. Lyra pointed weakly, her voice trembling in his head. "Home." There, Ethan staggered closer, his heart racing. But headlights suddenly pierced the darkness behind them. Engines roared, tires tore across the sand. Black vans and armored trucks surrounded the dunes. Dozens of soldiers poured out, their scanners glowing red, weapons raised. The hunters had found them. "Target sighted," a voice shouted. "Secure the aliens. Kill the man if necessary." Ethan pulled the girls close, his chest tight with fear. He had no weapon, no shield, nothing but his body to protect them. Still, he stepped forward, placing himself between the soldiers and the children. "You'll have to go through me," he growled. The soldiers raised their rifles, red dots glowing on his chest. Before they could fire, the ground trembled. The ship behind them pulsed with silver light. Reacting to the presence of the girls, energy rippled across the sand like waves. Knocking soldiers off balance, the air crackled with power. Lyra and Sierra's glow brightened. Though their bodies shook with weakness, they clutched Ethan's hands, their voices echoing in his mind together. "Stand with us," Ethan's heart pounded. He had no idea what would happen, but he squeezed their hands and shouted, "I'm with you." The glow spread, wrapping around him. Silver light exploded outward, forming a shield of energy. Bullets fired by the soldiers struck the shield and dissolved like sparks in the wind. The men shouted in confusion. Weapons useless, still they kept advancing, circling like wolves around prey. The commander stepped forward, his voice sharp and cruel. "You don't understand what you're protecting. They are weapons. They are the future of power. Give them to us, and you may live," Ethan glared, his voice steady. "They're not weapons. They're children, and they trusted me. Something your kind will never understand." The commander raised his hand, signaling the soldiers to fire again. But before they could, the ship roared to life. Its broken hull glowed brighter, silver light spreading across the dunes. The sand lifted in the air, swirling like a storm. Lyra and Sierra stepped forward, their glow merging with the ship's pulse. Their voices rang in Ethan's mind stronger than ever. "Show mercy, not hate." The soldiers fired blindly. But the storm swallowed their bullets one by one, their weapons overheated. Sparking and breaking apart, the men fell back, fear spreading through their ranks. Some dropped their rifles and fled into the desert. Others dropped to their knees. Shielding their eyes from the blinding light, Ethan stood in awe, the storm raging around him, yet he felt calm. The girls had power beyond human understanding. But instead of destroying their enemies, they only disarmed them. They had chosen mercy over revenge. They had chosen to protect, not to kill. The commander, furious, charged forward with a pistol. He raised it at Ethan's head, finger tightening on the trigger. Before the shot rang, Lyra lifted her hand. The pistol dissolved into dust, scattering in the wind. The commander fell to his knees, trembling. Staring at the children he had called weapons, Ethan stepped forward, his voice firm. "This is the difference between you and them. You see power as control, but they see power as hope, and that is why humans are different too. Because even in fear, even in weakness, we can choose kindness." The commander lowered his head. Defeated, the remaining soldiers retreated, their vehicles vanishing into the night. Silence returned to the desert, broken only by the hum of the ship. The glow faded, the storm settling. Lyra and Sierra collapsed, their small bodies trembling. Ethan caught them, holding them close. "You did it," he whispered. "You're safe now." The ship's door opened slowly, a ramp unfolding with soft light. Inside, the walls pulsed with life, waiting for them. The girls looked at Ethan, their glowing eyes filled with tears. "You come with us?" Sierra whispered weakly. Ethan hesitated, looking back at the desert, at the world he had known. Then he looked at them, fragile but strong. Children who had trusted him completely. His heart softened and he nodded. "Yes, I'll stay with you, together." They stepped into the ship. The door closed, silver light surrounding them. The engines roared, lifting the vessel slowly from the sand. Ethan felt the ground fall away, the stars filling the sky above. He held the girls close, whispering, "You're not alone anymore." "And neither am I." The ship vanished into the night, leaving only silence and wind across the dunes. And for the first time, Ethan felt that his small act of kindness, leaving food for the strays, had led him to something far greater. It had led him to prove that even in a universe full of fear and power, humans could be different.